formally codified by the legislature in that country, or that culture, or that specific city, province, and so on. Okay, so these are ways of behaving or modes of interaction that must be observed. Otherwise, and the importance of these norms is such that we feel as a society we must write them down and place them into a binding, coercive set of laws. Okay, so thou shalt not is generally the case. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, and that being codified in the law of a culture. These fall under laws. So many of these laws, they may carry criminal sanctions or civil sanctions, such as fines. Okay? So these are laws. Now the next category is sanctions, and we just sort of talked about that. But what are sanctions? These are anything that a society does to reward or punish inappropriate behaviors, reward appropriate behaviors while punishing inappropriate ones. This walking and chewing gum is starting to catch up with me, typing and talking. Alright, so sanctions can be anything from, again, incentives in the tax code. If you do these types of things, you get this much more money back. Or, for example, jail time. Or you can think of things, we said jail time, tax credits, environmental credits, right? The environmental movement lately, and some of the laws, for example, that have been codified, if you remember the Ontario Eco Tax, where you wanted to penalize buying certain chemicals that were detrimental to the environment. But then again, they found that they were just sort of taxing everything, and it wasn't really related to the environment, so it got a lot of bad publicity. But anything that there is sort of a punishment or reward system in place is a sanction. Okay, and these have to be considered if you're going to look at the immaterial influences on culture. Okay, so these are very important because, again, the immaterial factors will interact with the material factors in an environment, and over time they will produce a specific meaning and understanding of the world with which one specific culture will understand the world around them. And again, it will change based on another culture and their specific experience with the material environment and the immaterial factors that have developed around the ways in which they are working to tame the land and prosper in that harsh physical environment. Okay, so the next thing that we must discuss if we are talking about culture is the different ways in which cultures are compared or studied in the sociological field, and there are a couple of elements that you need to be aware of for your own assessment of culture. So let's put the title Comparing Cultures. Okay, because as I mentioned, there are different material and immaterial facts that confront every culture. Again, we are losing. Okay, there's different material and immaterial factors that ensures a variety of cultures and cultural differences. So one culture in one part of the world might react completely different to one phenomenon as it relates to their environment than another culture in a different part of the world might do in the same situation, but with a different environment. Okay, so in order to be aware of this, in order to study different cultures and see how different cultures are presented in scholarship, in the media, how our peers discuss other cultures, perhaps they've traveled out there and these types of things, and various social groups, we need to understand or have a framework of how cultures have been compared in these different media. So one method of viewing culture that has there's been a lot of resistance in the past few years towards various analyses of different cultures than our own is the term or the viewpoint of ethnocentrism. Now, ethnocentrism, essentially, if you break it down, means centered on ethnicity, your own ethnicity, if you will. So there is a tendency to place your own culture, your own ethnicity, and cultural settings as the center, the most advanced, and then view all other cultures through that lens as being inferior to a certain extent. And we've come across this before with our discussion of social Darwinism. So ethnocentrism is the tendency to view your own culture as superior to others. Okay, so what this does, it limits your sociological imagination, because you restrict it to viewing and considering other cultures through your own cultural lens. Okay, you're unable to appreciate diversity to a certain extent because you're viewing your culture as the, beginning of history, or sorry, the end of history, the most advanced, whereas others are trying to make it to where you have been. Okay, or where you are right now. So you're modern as opposed to everyone else who's a savage, for example, as we talked about during colonial times. The other tendency we should talk about, the alternative to ethnocentrism, is cultural relativism. And again, this is the opposite of ethnocentrism, because rather than assuming that your own culture is